All right, guys, it is Tuesday night. What does that mean? It's time for another Conversations with Commodores, and we've got an all-time great tonight, Jonathan Goff, number 47. How are you doing tonight, Mr. Goff?
Never better. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I want you to tell folks, because folks aren't going to believe when I say it, where do you live these days? What part of the country, and how cold is it right now?
Uh, so I live in South Dakota now, and believe it or not, people do actually live out here in this part of the country. And right now it's only about 20 degrees, so relatively warm for this time of year. But later in the winter, it can dip down to negative 40, 50, a little lower if we're not so lucky.
Any truth to the rumor that you worked out outside without a shirt on all day today, just getting buff and doing your thing because you can deal with that weather? Hey, Jonathan, we got Jamie Bryant, Edward DeMesa, Mark Matlock. We got some Commodores rolling in, showing you some love tonight. Guys, if you don't know, Jonathan played for Coach Bobby Johnson 04 to 07. He's a Super Bowl champ, two-time All-SEC, one of the top 100 Commodores of all time. But what you may not have known growing up in the Boston area, outside of Boston, this man swam, he played soccer, he was tennis, and then tell them what position you also played on offense as a junior high and high schooler. They're not going to believe this.
So I started out in high school, started out playing as a quarterback for the first couple of years, mostly on the offensive side of the ball.
Look at that jersey number behind him. That's his high school jersey, number 17. We got OJ Fleming in the house. Hey, OJ. Jonathan, how does a guy like yourself get out of Boston, get out of the ACC, the Big East, the Big Ten, and make his way to Nashville? How did Vanderbilt get on your radar back in the day?
So back in the day, I was recruited by Coach Bobby Johnson, and I don't know if you remember Coach McSwain. He was a recruiting coordinator, and he recruited me and recruited one of my teammates too, and we both decided that we were going to go down to Vanderbilt together and try to make the most of an opportunity to play SEC football and also get a great education. You know, it's not that often that a kid from Boston area gets a shot at playing in the best college football conference. And so I felt like it was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up.
Before they started recruiting you, had you even heard of Vanderbilt? I assume you knew of the SEC and the powerhouse state schools, but at what point did Vanderbilt get, when did you realize how academic oriented it was and that it was something that you wanted to look into?
So it was really during the recruiting process that I learned more and more about Vanderbilt, and once I started doing some of my own research and learning more about the program and the school itself, I started being able to connect some of the dots between some NFL players and the program. Like you had mentioned, one of them, Jamie Winborn, fellow linebacker, as well as Shelton Quarles and Jamie Duncan.
Well, I was going to say those fellas in the late 90s and early 2000s really set the tone, particularly on defense, going to the league. Every one of those guys had some success at various levels. But Jonathan, what other schools were recruiting you, or what other schools had you considered seriously about that ultimately did not pass the test that you passed over, so to speak?
So some other schools that were on the list were Wisconsin, and Harvard University was on the list, and also UConn and Stanford.
Well, those are all some great schools. Now, by the time you were a junior and senior, were you playing full-time defense in high school? What led to you going over to that side of the ball and not playing on the offense any longer?
So I was playing both offense and defense. I starting at running back and outside linebacker my senior year. And really, it was just our roster. I was fortunate to be a part of a pretty talented team up in New England,
Mhm.
where I think we made USA Today top 25 for a little while, and had, I want to say, upwards of 10 or 12 of my high school teammates ended up playing Division 1 football or baseball.
Mhm.
And so our coach just did, what he thought was best for the team and getting guys in positions where everybody can contribute.
Before the internet exploded, USA Today was our source every week from high school football. Where, if our team is, or were you recognized for being from your state, being the outstanding noted player of the week, how quickly would you guys go find USA Today to scour to see if your team or if one of you teammates were in the terribly important newspaper back in the day for those purposes?
Honestly, I think my mom was probably more excited about it than any of us. Or
Mhm.
we were all just had our heads down, focused on the next game.
Mhm. Uh, and I want to get to your mom in just a second, Jonathan. We've got a couple. We got Alan Young, who's going to be on the show soon. We got John L. Thomas. We got Hunter McCarthy. Telling you, you're getting some love tonight. They're rolling in for Jonathan tonight. Jonathan, I know I've read several interviews over the last couple of weeks getting ready for tonight about the influence of your mom and how important she's been and during your life and in making decisions. And I know that parents can be extremely influential. I don't want to talk about the athletic side of things. I want to talk about the academic side of things, the social side of things, away from playing sports. Share with us, to the extent that you want to, about your mom's influence on those things and the tone she set for you as a child.
Okay. So my mom, she grew up right outside of Boston, Mass, in Chelsea, and she raised my brother and I, and mostly in Stoneham, Massachusetts.
Mhm.
And yes, boy, where do I start? You know,
I
uh,
know.
so, with, looking back at it and considering everything that she did for us, and now being a father myself, it's like the older I get, the more I realize how much she actually did for us.
Mhm. Did your mom, was she the type that, did she attend the sporting events that you and your brother played, or was she busy working, or what was her input, I guess, from your sports career?
So yeah, she did it all. She did work a lot, but she was also always there for all of our games, and she was my first basketball coach too. Uh,
Really?
so she coached my brother and I. She coached our basketball team, youth basketball team, at the Stoneham Boys and Girls Club.
Excellent. Now, I know of one of my buddies whose mother was at every one of his games, regardless of the sport. But what was unique about her attendance and her participation is she stood up the entire contest, every game. You never saw the woman sit down.
Okay.
She never said a word. She was as prideful as any other parent in the stands. Now, the dad, he would go crazy. He would lose his mind. He was the vocal one. But what was unique about her tradition, if you will, is
Mhm.
she just stood there and studied and mentally prayed and just knew that things would be okay. So here's my question. Did your mom have any traditions, any superstitions, any unique things that you always could count on when you knew she was in the stands, or maybe post game conversations, things like that, that were kind of special to you that you recall?
Yeah. So my mom, she was always my biggest cheerleader, my biggest fan, and it's I say that because I could distinctly remember that I could always hear her at all of my sporting events, and
Mhm.
whether I was on the field and we had 5,000 people in the crowd, I could still hear her voice, over everybody else. And whether it's football, same thing in basketball too, and at track meets, and I could always, if I couldn't see her, I could hear cheering me on, rooting for me, supporting me and our team.
Now, I don't want you to recreate what you would hear, but just tell us, what would she be yelling, or what would you hear from her? You don't have to recreate her voice, but what was it that was distinct to you that you always knew that she was in the stands rooting for you?
Oh yeah, it was always encouraging. It was always encouraging. Always wanting me to get a big hit, or get a big run, go for a touchdown. And sometimes she would even work the refs a little bit too.
Awesome.
Just,
Awesome.
especially in basketball, because basketball was her sport. Her first love. As far as athletics go, and yeah, I remember hearing her working the refs.
Oh, that's so great. She knew the sport. She coached you guys. That's so cool. So cool. Guys, I've got Jonathan Goff, number 47, with us tonight. And we're talking about life as a youth growing up, some sports. And, Jonathan, everybody has their favorite stories from different times of their sporting career, whether you're in the pros like yourself, Vanderbilt, like all of us, high school, etc. And here's where I want to head for just a minute or two. Before you got into high school, before you started making your name and your presence and coaches were putting you on the radar, was there any particular either sport or accomplishment within a sport that folks locally knew Jonathan Goff from? They knew him as I'm going to make this up, an excellent swimmer. I know you swam. I know you played soccer. What were you known for before you made your presence known on the football field?
You know, that's a great question, because before high school, I guess I wasn't really known for a whole lot. I was always known as the quiet kid that just liked to play sports, whatever it was, whether kickball or floor hockey, at the everything at the Boys and Girls Club and everything that comes with that. And I just wanted to just hang out and just play, compete, do something competitive.
Well, you brought it up a couple of times before we got live, and now talk about the boys club in your hometown. Was that a place where you and your brother went most days? Did you play most of your sports there? Was there a particular coach or leader there who was pretty influential on you guys back in the day?
Yeah, there were a handful. So my brother and I, we moved to Stoneham, and I think I was in second grade.
Mm-hmm.
And basically every day from second grade all the way through eighth grade, we went to the Boys and Girls Club after school. Then my mom would come pick us up, after work, and then we finish our evening there. But at the Boys and Girls Club, I think it's now the Stoneham Wakefield Boys and Girls Club. So the two towns joined together.
Mm-hmm.
And I said a couple of the names of the people there that influenced me the most were so one was Flinny. We called him Flinny. His name was Rick Flynn. Mm-hmm. And then also Donna and Marino DeVergilo, mm-hmm. Mike Garasi, Zubin Lalawala. Mm-hmm. I mean, just a handful of community members that made an impact on my life and the way things turned out for me and for my brother.
I don't know the answer to this. I'm curious if Boys and Girls Clubs are as impactful as they were back in your youth and my youth, because they were awesome back in the day. I played Little League football through the Boys Club of my hometown in Dothan, Alabama. And I just remember ping pong, playing all kind of made up games in our gym. There was a regular gym with a regular floor, but they also had a carpet area, which we all hated because nobody wanted those carpet burns when you're diving for a touchdown or whatever. But Boys and Girls Club, just as a side note, have just been so impactful for so many youth. I just hope that they still are today like they were for you. We got DC Crosby in the house. We got Dwayne Jones. He said that you're a big piece of what's known as LBU, Linebacker University, back in the day. That's so true. Jonathan, when it came time to leave Massachusetts, you're coming south. Mm-hmm. How hard was that for you and your mom and your brother, with you leaving that part of the country, and you're on your way? You're 18, 19, whatever you were, 17, I don't know. And you're now several states away. You are a plane flight away. How tough was that transition, going from being at home, big fish, little pond, to now the next phase of your life? Because that transition can be tricky for some.
Yeah. Well, for me, I didn't think a whole lot about making the transition. I just figured I'm gonna go down and give it my best effort. And, just so long as I know I put my best foot forward day after day, that, whatever the results may be, it's going to be what it's going to be. But, I know it was hard for my mom because I'm the youngest,
Mhm.
and then she was officially empty nesting after that. So I know that was a tough pill for her to swallow. And, my brother actually went to school at Morehouse and Georgia Tech. And so
Mhm.
he was just a bus ride away down in Atlanta. And
Mhm.
so he and I, we were able to connect a couple times between Nashville and Atlanta.
Mhm. Did your mom ever consider moving south while you guys were down here, down
Uh,
in the south?
I'm sure she thought about it.
Yeah. Uh, wow. And what's the age difference between you and your brother?
No, just a year.
Okay. All right. So it was pretty quick. Within a year plus, you and your brother both moved south to start the next phases of life. Any homesickness for you? Which is perfectly, I mean, I was terribly homesick for a while.
hmm I don't think I had a whole lot, at least not early on, just trying to wrap my head around the college schedule and with
Mhm.
classes and football and keep trying to keep my grades up.
Well,
And
how growing up, were you a pretty organized guy, or did you have to be helped along in your organization? And here's why I ask. When you get out of the cocoon of home, of growing up in at home and high school and all that, you knew your routine. You knew what you needed to do. But when you get to college, when you get to Vanderbilt, Division I, SEC, academics, football obligations, holy smokes, you got to be organized. How was that transition for you?
that I'll be honest, that was a learning experience for me. I thought I was organized until freshman year, or because growing up we had a lot of structure, and then
Mhm.
I kind of found a routine that worked for me, and then I learned I needed a new routine pretty quickly my freshman year.
Now, before you actually made your way to campus, did you take a recruiting visit? Did you know any of the guys either on the team or coming in with your class, your signing class?
A couple, I did
Mhm.
take an official visit, and yeah, oddly enough, that was during one of the snowstorms that we were talking about weather earlier, and yeah, we had some snow, and
Mhm.
most of campus was shut down, and classes were canceled, and there was maybe a half inch of snow on the ground.
Well, I was going to say, you call that Tuesday growing up, no big deal. I bet you probably chuckled a little bit, but who do you remember who your hosts were, or any of the guys who you met during that recruiting visit?
Yeah, so some of the upperclassmen, or I guess my host was Ron Bullock. He was
Mhm.
a running back out of, I think, Louisiana, and also met some of the D linemen, Ray Brown and Ralph McKenzie and Rob Dinwiddie, and also met Moses and Otis and some of the other linebackers.
Excellent, excellent. Now, when you come down in, I don't know, January, December, whenever it was, I assume either they took you to a basketball game or you did something on campus. And even though you didn't get to do a ton because you're only there for about 48 hours,
hmm
I guess it already made an impression on you by meeting the coaches and meeting some of the players. Did that visit kind of solidify in your mind, I definitely am coming here. I know I want to sign with Vanderbilt, and maybe it was the Bobby Johnson factor, getting to really talk with him. I guess where I'm going with this is kind of share a little bit. Not everybody goes on a recruiting visit. Even the guys who sign, sometimes they don't. But share a little bit about your impressions, what you remember about that early stages of decision making and your impressions.
I guess what sold me on Vanderbilt and Vanderbilt football, it was a couple things. So there's the opportunity to play SEC football, opportunity to get a good education and solidify my future after football. And but really, what it was for me was the people. It's a combination of the the players, the coaches, the support staff. I just felt like it was a good fit for me and really gonna the best place for me to succeed.
Well, very, very good. Oh, we got Kenny Cole coming out of Huntsville. Hey, Kenny, good to see you. Jonelle says, Goff, good to see you're doing well, brother. Was he a teammate back in the day? Were you all there at the same time?
No, yeah, we overlapped a little bit. Yeah, I think he came in when I was close to being on my way out.
Well, speaking of who else you overlapped with, I suspect that our head coach, Clark Lee, may have given you a couple of good wallops in practice, a welcome to the SEC moment or two. Do you recall Coach Lee at fullback and getting tangled up with him?
You know, I'd like to say I got the better of him every time, but that might not be exactly true.
Well, maybe one day we'll ask him. We'll let you guys compare notes back in the day. Guys, I've got Jonathan Goff, of course, number 47, talking a little bit. We're just getting to Vanderbilt, just getting to the campus. And Jonathan, when you got to school, when you got to Vanderbilt, what was it about the game when you started practicing, started working out, that was really eye-opening to you? You were accomplished in high school. You were well-regarded coming to campus. They were excited that you were there, but that's only half of the equation. The other half is what you do with it. And we all have that welcome moment, whether it's a big hit in a practice, or you're surprised at the speed of running backs, or whatever it is. What made that impression that, wow, I'm in big time college football? And then the second part of it is, what was it that gave you that confidence to know that you could compete, not just survive, but could compete?
So that's a great question there. So I had I'd say one of the most eye-opening things for me was is the amount of time and work that went into it. Because coming from the high school I came from, we lifted weights 3 days a week. We might run a couple days a week. And then as far as film goes, I mean, we might watch film 1 or 2 days a week, and that was it. And then when we got to, we get to Vanderbilt and we have 2 a days, and as we spend as much time in the meeting rooms as we did on the field, as we did in the weight room. It was really eye-opening as what type of work and effort and time commitment that it was going to be.
So that's the first phase of it, or the first part of my compound, very complex question. The second part is, I guess the question really should be asked, when did you gain your confidence athletically in that environment? What event, what transpired to say to yourself, I can compete at this level. I'm not just going to be on this roster and fill a spot. I know I can compete because what? Why?
Well, so that was I guess that was a regularly evolving thing for me. I remember my redshirt freshman year. I redshirted, and I think I was 17 for my entire freshman season. So I was one of the younger guys, and I think they wanted me to, get in the weight room and develop some. And every Friday morning we had power hour with Coach Sisk and Coach Moore and Coach Housewright and the strength and conditioning staff, and we would have competitions. And I did, if I remember correctly, I did well during those competitions, and so I got some confidence from that. And we had a red shirt scrimmage in the fall too, and I think that was probably during our bye week where we got together in the red shirt groups. We had just 11 on 11, just full tackle scrimmage, and I made a couple plays during that, and then I had a lot of support from my teammates and coaches, and just a lot of encouragement, which really made me believe that I could continue to progress and keep taking the next steps to keep improving.
Well, it sounds like you were seeing some achievements, whether they being small and in moving up in your strength, your conditioning and things. And at some point, the natural athlete in you went from thinking to just doing, reacting. And I know that that takes a while. You're playing arguably the hardest position, not just on defense, but in all of football, because you've got to know where really everybody else is on both sides of the ball to be able to figure out what you need to do or to help call the defenses. Who was ahead of you in the depth chart? Who was ahead of you in upperclassmen who you really either followed or tried to pattern your game or looked up to at that or during your first year or two?
Okay. So there were two guys that really stick out in terms of leadership. And one of them was Moses Lasivigi,
Mhm.
and the other was a Mike linebacker Otis Washington.
Mhm.
And I can't say enough about those two guys. They were both great leaders on the field and off the field. And really, I'll say Otis really showed me what it meant to be a leader, because it wasn't just the rah rah guy getting everybody pumped up with pregame speeches. Because I'll be the first to tell you that was not one of my strengths. Getting people ready to run through a wall. But in terms of bringing others along with you and encouraging the younger classes to keep doing what they're doing and keep improving, regardless of the circumstance. That was something I'll always take with me.
You can be a leader by example, a quiet leader who just does his work and sets the tone and others follow it and watch it, which I suspect that was your forte. Or you can be one of those passionate leaders that just is very vocal and gets in guys' faces and gets them pumped up. And sometimes a successful team needs a little bit of both.
Oh yeah.
And it's hard to be the guy who is both at the same time. I know of only a few who can be that way, but regardless, your personality has to really dictate, I think, because how hard would it have been for you to change your personality type to be the rah-rah kind of a leader and still be able to focus on all the tasks at hand that made you so successful? That would have been pretty tough, wouldn't it? I mean, you kind of stayed in your emotional lane, so to speak, to be successful.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that it just wasn't a natural fit to fill that role for me. It's the great thing about it is that it's a team game. And there's 11 guys out there all fulfilling their roles.
Yeah.
And for us, it was some of those emotional leaders were guys like Theo Horrocks and Marcus Buggs, another fellow linebacker, where those guys were the emotional guys. And
Talk a little bit about Coach Warren Beelan. I know Coach was your linebackers coach. I think most, if not all the time you were there. Share a little bit about his influence and what type of a coach he was.
yes, yeah, Coach Beelan, I can't say enough good things about Coach B. Um, as I was just thinking about it the other day, where if I remember right, I think I am now as old as he was when I was at Vanderbilt, and so just trying to put some of those things in perspective and picture myself in his shoes. It's kind of hard to do, big shoes to fill. And Coach Beelan, he was really my first real linebacker coach to coach me up on things like technique and stance, and really teach me the defensive side of the game.
What type of a leader or a coach from a emotional standpoint? Was he the rah-rah type or was he more subdued? Talk about his interactions with the guys in your position group.
Hmm. Right. So so Coach B, he could definitely be intense when he needed to be, but for the most part, he tried to simplify the message in a way that we could all understand it. And then if guys had more questions, then they ask questions and we have those discussions. But he present us the information in a way that was easy to understand. And and if we had to go through corrections on film, He wasn't. I wouldn't say he wasn't exactly shy about letting guys know about they keep messing up the same thing over and over. And with the same, and that went both ways too. When guys, when they got that mistake corrected, they got just as much praise on the other side too.
What was fun for you about playing football in college?
So I love to just compete, and I love the intensity level of it.
Hold. Let me pause you. Guys, what I'm hearing from Jonathan is he liked to knock the hell out of people on the other side of the ball, but he's not going to say that. But I suspect that was part of what he enjoyed. Continue.
Yeah, but yeah, that's got to be like like a given playing that position, and just playing with other guys that love to that also love football and just good dudes too.
Heidi Gray Breeding is with us. Hey Heidi, thanks for joining us. I need to get you on the show at some point. What did you not like about playing college football, Jonathan?
Oh man. If class didn't take up so much time.
Oh yeah, there was that.
No, I'm kidding, but I don't think I have any real regrets. There were some games that could have gone either way, or maybe if I didn't miss that one assignment, maybe we would have won type stuff. But it all happened the way it did for a reason.
Let's shift to the academic side of Vanderbilt. A lot of our competitors, the other state schools and other schools that we play, may not have the academic standards or requirements that Vanderbilt, and that's what sets our school apart. We know that. We know that going in. We know that as alums. When did you find that footing, if you will, that organization, that confidence, and an academic, athletic, and I'll throw in a third component, social part of your college experience?
So I'd say that's probably somewhere between second semester of my freshman year and first semester of my second year.
So maybe during that calendar year, that would have been 2005. Yeah, if you came in the fall of 04, spring of 05, summer of 05, do you remember, did you go home or did you stay on campus and take class and work out that summer? What was your norm during the summers?
Right. So every summer I I went home for at least a month. The first few summers it was right after finals. I'd go home for about a month and then come back in time for summer school, because I took that I majored in mechanical engineering, and I spread out my credits so that I had some summer school too, and ended up needing to take both summer school sessions to keep up with credits.
Yes, I want to pause for just a second, because you just reminded me of something, Jonathan. I think it's very important for anybody who played at Vanderbilt, who's considering going to Vanderbilt. Jonathan truly is, and we're going to get to this in a little bit, but you truly are, to me, the epitome of what it means to be a Vanderbilt man, to go to Vanderbilt, to have the experience. It's one thing to go and play ball and have a major in something that means absolutely nothing. You're just trying to get through. You're trying to get to the league. Mechanical engineering is no joke at Vanderbilt. And after your playing career, we're going to come to that in a little bit. But this man is the very embodiment of what those 4 or 5 years do to set you up for the next 40 or 50 years. And I want y'all to remember that. We're going to come back to it. And I mean this with the utmost compliment to you, Jonathan. Going through mechanical engineering and playing Division I and being all SEC 2 years, when did you sleep? When did you get your rest? How did you manage that? Because that's tough. That's not, so you may have taken it for granted, but we did not. Talk to us a little bit about that, Jonathan.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. The compliment. And I suppose it's I really just time management, and and I can't take credit for all of that because I had so much support and help getting myself on track. Where my first semester, I remember I struggled quite a bit in the classroom, and
Sure.
just relearning time management and
Mhm.
how to use all of my time efficiently. And so sometimes that meant that that I wasn't out every weekend or every evening. And at every opportunity that presented itself, I kind of had to change my perspective and my mindset. It's an opportunity to go have fun now, or an opportunity to go make sure I'm eligible to play football next season.
Yeah, when you're weighing Tuesday night beer and pool with the fellas versus this assignment that's due Thursday, I suspect you had to go to the assignment part way more often than you really wanted to. But
Oh yeah.
I truly hope that the guys and any sport at Vanderbilt, I hope that the freshman athletes have to go through a time management training seminar or something that's in place that I'm not aware of. But Jonathan, how was it instilled in you? Was there an advisor? Did you just follow along that others ahead of you were doing and kind of copied that? How did you know that?
Well, so I'll be honest with you. That was what I had said was the reality of my personal situation, where my grades were at a point where I was on, I think they called it Vanderbilt probation,
Mhm.
where they just kind of they flagged my GPA and said, "Hey, we have some decisions we need to make here." And if it was not for Miss Elizabeth Wright and her staff
Mhm.
and their support in getting me back on track, that's I may not have graduated as a Commodore.
Mhm.
So it's a combination of Miss Elizabeth, and also my mom may have given me a little encouragement too.
Oh, I suspect you're sugarcoating that. I guarantee you she did. But Jonathan, it is the rare individual who gets to your level or any levels of success in life, whatever those goals may be, who do it on their own. It is the rare individual. And if they are that individual, then they have refused help or they're too prideful. My point being is, we all have had help. We all continue to get help. Or
Mhm.
now you may be in a position where you're giving that help, you're paying it forward. Ryan Seymour gives a shout out to Elizabeth Wright as
But
well. We got some more. We got George White is in the house. Hey, George, hope all's well out in California. Jonathan, it is, I suspect that you, even though we've just met, you seem, and from the interviews I've seen over the years, I know you to be a humble fella. I know that. But I also know that every once in a while, some praise or some recognition comes your way, and rightfully so. So where I want to go with this, of course, you were making all kind of wonderful tackles and accomplishments and just kicking ass in the SEC backfields during those years. And we can talk about some of those accomplishments because I want to know whose block you knocked off. What was the best accomplishments from an athletic standpoint? But even bigger picture than that, you were representing our school. You were one of the leaders your last few years on and off the field. At that time, you may or may not have felt any weight of pressure on your shoulders, but I've never been in your position. So that's what I want to ask. Did it come naturally to you, or was it thrust upon you and you struggled to get to that point where you were a leader in the school? You were one of the faces of the school on and off the field. Was it a struggle? Did it come naturally? Talk to us about that process about leadership.
um, that that's a heavy question. I'd say probably a little bit of both. I'd say probably a little bit of both.
Mhm.
Where I guess the some of the attention and um and awards and things like that, and the recognition that I was getting, it felt new to me, where I guess you could say I wasn't used to getting really any type of recognition is the way I saw it. That, and this is kind of the way I was brought up by my mom too, was that you just, you go out and you give it your best effort. And I'll never forget every time before I'd go out, whether it's a sporting event or to go do something social with friends in high school, middle school, whenever it was. My mom would always say, remember who you are and what you are. And that just kind of stuck with me as time's gone on, where I just kind of saw it as, I'm a reflection of my family. I'm a reflection of my team, my parents, and so that's always been kind of something that I've tried to take to heart.
Leadership is some people, it's just inherently built into them. It's in their DNA. Others have to learn it. And regardless of how you get to being a leader, it's what you do with it is what makes the difference, and how you impact others. And you did that so beautifully your junior and senior years. But I want to talk about some of those games for a minute. You guys had some excellent wins. You beat the Orange, you beat the Bulldogs, you beat maybe South Carolina, maybe Auburn, some memorable games. What was it about playing middle linebacker at Vanderbilt during those SEC games in those big stadiums that really are some good memories for you?
Oh yeah, there's nothing like it. All those games that you mentioned, when we beat UT, I think that was my sophomore year. Then junior year we beat Georgia at Georgia, and senior year we beat South Carolina at South Carolina. I think one of my favorite parts about all of that was that those were all away games. We were on the road. The crowds aren't exactly rolling out the red carpet for you as the bus rolls in. And just the adversity, the animosity from not just the other team but the crowd, but it's just your coaches, your team members, and it's just you and your guys, and it's just going out and competing.
Well, when, as Coach Lee calls the current team, Team 2, when they beat Kentucky a few weeks ago at Kentucky, I bet that brought back some smiles on your face to those games that you just mentioned, because going into any SEC away game is hostile territory. And, you come out of there, you sneak out a win, or you beat them soundly. That's got to be one of the best athletically feelings that you can be as an athlete, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Jonathan, let's kind of move forward to your senior year, and you're starting to get on the radar, maybe with some scouts. Maybe you've already been on there since your junior year. At what point do you remember thinking, hey, this Sunday gig might be a reality for me? I don't know if they called it pro day back then or testing day, but take us through a little bit of that process, because it's not many of us like yourself get to go through pro day, testing day, and then actually get drafted and move on to the next level. So take us through a little bit of that process.
Yeah. So I guess the first time I actually thought playing on Sundays might be a reality for me was, I think it was maybe my sophomore or junior year, when Coach Beelan, we had a meeting going over a couple things with the defense, and things to prepare for. I think it was for spring ball or something, and he said that and he only said it once. He said, if you keep progressing the way you are, he said, I'll be watching you play on Sundays. And that's something that I never forgot. And it's, he never said it again, never brought it up again. But that was something that that stuck with me, and said, hey, I must be doing something right. That if I stay the course and keep trying to be the best player that I can be, that I'll have a shot at playing football after college.
Isn't it amazing how one comment makes such an impression?
Yeah.
Such an impact, good or bad, but obviously it set a tone in the back of your mind. So what was it called again, I don't know if back then it was called Pro Day or whatever it was called. Did y'all have one maybe in the spring of '08, after your senior year concluded?
No, we did. It was pro day. It was pro day yet. So they had pro day in, I think it was in April or March, maybe. And that was held on campus. We were the local host site for at Vandy, and there were some other schools that came by. But I think 30 or so scouts, 30 or so teams were there too. Because is at the pro day, and Chris Williams was a first round pick. He was a same draft class as me, and Earl Bennett. I was a third round pick. Both those guys went to the Bears, and then we had a couple of guys go as free agents. With Theo and Marcus. But before my pro day, we had the NFL Combine that was in Indianapolis, and so they'll I believe it's seniors only that they'll invite to the pro day, and it's limited to 200 and something participants. And so they invite you to get an invite to the pro day, and you're usually training between your last football game all the way up through pro day, or up through to the combine. You're training somewhere for your combine drills.
Were you still in classes during the spring, or had you completed your studies?
No, I was, thankfully I was all done. I'd finished up my last class in the winter.
Well, that's cool, because then that gave you just to prepare for the next level. Had you hired an agent? Did you hire a trainer? Did you use the Vanderbilt facilities? Kind of take us a little bit through that. And then I want to know who called you from the Giants when you were drafted.
Okay. Yeah. So so my agent was Bus Cook, and I got in touch with he's out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I got in touch with Bus through Jay Cutt, and then I went down to Florida, down to train with Tom Shaw. And I guess December, January, February, went down to train with Tom Shaw in Orlando for the combine. And after the combine, I moved back to Nashville and was training in Nashville up until pro day.
How nervous were you when the draft came around? Were you excited? Could you not sleep, or was it just,
I mean,
it happens? Talk to me.
It was hard not to be excited. It was hard not to be on the edge of my seat. But I was at home for the draft, and we had some high school buddies and some family over at the house all weekend.
Wait, you were back up in Massachusetts?
I was up in Massachusetts. Yep,
okay.
At my mom's house.
Okay.
And
you get the call from who?
I got the call from, I want to say it was Coach Tom Coughlin. Coach Tom Coughlin called.
Now, prior to that call, did you have any idea that the Giants were interested, that you were going to be in the 5th round? Look, this is not something, this is exciting for me too. Not like I've ever been through any of it. So I need you to bring us into your world for a little bit.
Yeah, so I had some idea, but I didn't really have that big of an idea. But so the Giants linebacker coach was Bill Sheridan. He came to our pro day, and Coach Bill and I, we sat down and watched some film together, went through some game film for a while, just talking through, hey, what are you doing on this play? What defense are you running? Why are you running this way? Why are you dropping that way type stuff? And then after film, Bill had us out on the field for our position specific drills, and he ran all of those drills. And so from his presence and as his level of involvement, I had some idea that there was a level of interest from the Giants, but it was really hard to tell. And then then draft day comes around. It's the day 2 of the draft, and my mom and my uncles are all upstairs watching the draft, watching all the names go by. And I was actually down in the basement with my brother and my cousins, and we were playing Halo. all day, just playing on the Xbox, doing what we could
Awesome.
to pass the time, and just enjoy the
And
time.
you get that, you see that 212 area code and you're like, oh, this is it. This is it.
Yep. It was, remember, it was the fifth round, and
Uh-huh.
I got my phone rang, and Coach Coughlin called, and this was before my name went across. He just calls me up and he says, hey John, this is Tom Coughlin from the New York Giants. I said, we're thinking about taking you with the next pick. And he said, what do you think about being a Giant? And so knowing, me, I said, oh, that sounds great, coach. When do I start?
I was gonna say, I can't see you just losing your mind. Let's go. It's more like what you just said, Coach. Let's get started. How cool. At what point did you really appreciate all that hard work, all what I just went through for the last 10 years led to today? Did it give you a little bit of satisfaction? I know you in your mind, I got work to do. I got to earn my spot. I'm a fifth rounder, but you had to have a little bit of self-satisfaction on that day. Please tell me you did.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you couldn't not have some type of, satisfaction or appreciation for being able to realize, an achievement like that. And what was even better is that I was able to spend it with with my family and my friends, and and knowing that I wouldn't have been in that position without their support, and I wouldn't have been in that position without my teammates' support.
Now,
And like I said, it didn't take long for me to get back to, it's what do I have to do to earn a spot on the team.
and did they get you up to the facility the next day or a couple of days later?
I think it was, it wasn't too long before they had a mandatory rookie mini camp, but it brought in a few dozen rookies, and then not long after that, they had a training camp with the whole team, and then right into training camp.
I want to take just a couple of minutes, and we're getting close, John. I really appreciate you taking us through your journey. Did you feel like your years at Vanderbilt, playing in the SEC against the best competition, did that really get you ready for the next level? I know that there was a lot to learn, and I know that on the next level, everybody is top. I know that just from following the sport. But did you think your years with Coach Beelan and Coach Johnson get you ready for the next level?
No, absolutely, it did. Just playing against that level of talent and that speed in college, because there was such a huge difference from high school to college, and then it's depending on your college experience, there's that same jump from college to the NFL. And having played at Vanderbilt, played in the SEC, that absolutely prepared me for the speed of the game. And also, all that said, the game was definitely a lot faster, a lot more physical. But
Any other Vandy guys on the roster? Any other? I know there were SEC guys, but any other Vandy guys on the roster your first year?
my first year,
Or really any of the years you were with the Giants?
that's a good question.
That's okay.
I
It'll
don't
come
know
to
off the top
mind
of my head, but I don't think so. But having been a part of Coach Johnson's program with Coach Beelan, they taught me to be a student of the game, and that helped me out tremendously, because I wasn't the strongest or the fastest guy, and so I had to know where to be, when to be there.
Well, you probably really set a tone when the Giants linebacker coach interviewed you and you're watching film, because if you'd have just been an athlete and a knucklehead who really just couldn't explain what was going on, that's one thing. But I suspect in that meeting, that was your interview. That was as important as any film that you put together. I can't help but think that. Did that ever dawn on you, or did it resonate with you?
After the fact, it did, because surprisingly there were a lot of similarities in the schemes. Both running 4-3, over fronts, under fronts.
Very good, very good. Talk a little bit about the "Hey, I made it" moment. And I realize by this point you're now a professional. You're not a rah-rah guy, but you've now earned your time. You've earned your place just through your accomplishments and working hard. But then you get some playing time. You're playing against all these guys that you were watching when you were at Vanderbilt, or maybe even the older guys when you were in high school. But was there a moment for you that says, I've now reached the peak of my profession? This is pretty damn cool.
So yeah, that's another great question. But honestly, for me, I don't think I truly had that moment until after my playing days were over, because I just wanted more. I wanted, if you know what I mean. It's like, okay, so I have an opportunity to my second year, and partway through the season, I had an opportunity to start, and I let my friends and family know, and that was awesome. But I wanted more. I wanted to come out of the gate as the starting middle linebacker, and then I didn't want to be just the first and second down guy. I wanted to be an every down linebacker. I wanted to earn and work towards that. And once I got that, I wanted to be, just keep progressing, keep getting better.
But what was it like playing in the biggest city in the world, the biggest stage, the biggest athletic stage in the world? Did that look? I don't mean to be a super fan here, but I'm sitting in the stands, and I think that's pretty damn cool. A guy from Vanderbilt is a starting middle linebacker for New York. Do you? And I guess this separates the professional from the amateur. The professional, it's a job, and I've got to keep my job. I got to keep my head down. But for the rest of us who are rooting and watching, that's pretty damn awesome to achieve that. And I don't really have, I don't know, a question in there. It's an observation. But how did your friends, how'd your family, how did you take that during those couple of years?
It's every bit of everything that you just said. Where it's my job, it's my profession. I want to always improve my craft, work on my craft, and so there was every bit of that. But I loved every minute of it. You can't play this game at that level of competition and not love it.
You're so right. I don't want to skip over the fact you're on a Super Bowl champion team while you're hurt. I don't want to bypass that. But Jonathan, I want to talk about, and I talk about this on the show almost every time, that Father Time is undefeated. At some point, the athlete in you knows that it is time to move to the next phase in life, whether it is by choice or not by choice. And we know that I know that you had two major knee injuries that, tell me if I'm wrong now, that it effectively curtailed and ended your pro career. But, and I don't mean to take you into a dark place, but at some point, when did you recognize it's time to retire? It's time to move to my next phase in life, whatever that's going to be. Because here is where we're going to pick up where I was talking about earlier about 4 to 5 years setting us up for 40 to 50 years as a Vanderbilt man.
Right. So I'd say I probably had that moment in the fall or winter of 2013, because I remember it's pretty vivid memory for me, just because it wasn't because anytime that you decide to close one door, open up the next one, and move on to the next thing, it's preferable that you can do that on your own terms. But really what I try to stay focused on is that I had an opportunity to do what I loved and even doing that for any period of time, and being able to have that experience, and also be part of a world championship team. It's all makes it, just all that much better.
Well, sure. You get to that point where you recognize now is time for me to pivot to the next phase. You retire from the NFL. I want you to share with this is the irony, I think, are pretty cool. What was one of your first projects? What were you doing? And what was one of your first projects that was kind of tied back to football or to the NFL?
Okay. So like are you asking about my work today? Yeah. So I was actually now I'm in business development
Mhm.
for an automation company based out of Minneapolis, and so that's so we make machines smart. We work with the ag machinery, construction machinery, factory
Mhm.
floor machinery, and I was doing a product demonstration for a customer with just a sensor. And so it's a sensor that picks up that it lets you know when there's something in front of it. So just like your car door, when your car door is open too long, there's an alarm that goes off. So there's
Mhm.
basically a sensor telling the brains of your car, "Hey, doors open, sound this alarm." And I used my Super Bowl ring as the target for the sensor. And the clients that I was with and my channel partners, they all got a kick out of that.
You gotta take us to that because Super Bowl rings are not like little pinky gold rings. They don't just kind of hang there.
Mhm.
Is it within handshot? Do you have it on? Is it near you? Because
It's
I'm sure it is gigantic.
it's in the next room. I mean, I'd be happy to go grab it.
I'll let you, we'll post a picture after. I don't want to send you on an errand, but did people know at the time who you were from a past professional life, or did it come up organically and you're just like, yeah, it is what it is?
Yeah, one or two guys did know, and they had asked to see it, but the majority of the room
Mhm.
had they had no idea.
Well, they did after that, I'm sure.
But more times than not, it does come up organically.
It probably becomes the next 30 minutes of a conversation if people had no idea, because I suspect you're not as big physically as you were 10 years ago when you were training. But I know you still train. I know you still work out. And that's what I want to talk about. We got just a couple more minutes, Jonathan. And I sure appreciate your time and sharing a glimpse into your story. The athlete that's in your DNA, the competition, the desire to compete, that's with us for life. It comes and goes the varying degrees. But I know there's a competitor still with you. I know you have children who are active. How do you deal with your competitive fire now that you're 10 years removed from playing in the NFL?
Well, the further away from the game I get, the more it evolves. And
Mhm.
so my two younger daughters are starting to get involved in sports now,
Mhm.
and then I had the opportunity to coach them in basketball this past, it was the last month and a half.
Hey, where did that come from?
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
my oldest daughter, she finished up her volleyball season, and
Mhm.
also she's on the was on the debate team this year. She's a freshman in high school, and she's got a lot of fire, where she wants to win, whether
Mhm.
it's volleyball, whether it's debate team. She just wants to put her best foot forward. So
That
that's
is,
that's fun to see.
does your oldest daughter have your personality or her mother's?
It's more, I'd say more like her mom. Yeah, my
Oh,
oldest and my middle are more like their mom, and
mhm.
youngest is more like me.
Is there a gymnasium any louder than a volleyball gymnasium during a match? Is there any gym louder?
Yeah, no, it's amazing, just the support and the intensity of that game. It's a pretty fast game. If you haven't seen it before, I'd encourage anybody to go watch.
Now, when one of my daughters played for a couple of years, the parents volunteered on the court to be the flag people in or out. Have you been drafted to be the in or out flag guy?
Not yet, not yet. But
Well, your day's
my
coming, my friend.
my wife was a college volleyball player, and so
Ah,
she's a little higher on that totem pole than I am.
oh, well, thank your lucky stars. You were not one of those flag dads, is what we call them here. because you will get in trouble with your own child if you rule the wrong way. Jonathan, just 2 or 3 more questions, bud. And this has been, I really appreciate your time, and your story is fascinating. And I truly have meant what I've said earlier about how you really are the epitome of a Vanderbilt man. And it is the rare athlete who goes from his or her playing days, recognizes it's time to pivot, and then finds their next career, and then with no regrets. And it sounds like you have no regrets. 2 questions. When you finally hung up your cleats, were you able to continue following the game, or did you put it aside for a number of years because it was kind of out of your system, so to speak, or whatever your personal reason was, then you picked it back up later on?
Right. So I had to put the game aside, where I didn't watch on Saturday, Sunday, wasn't checking stat lines. I just had to, I guess, like kind of like a cleanse from, just to kind of almost hit that reset button and reset my reality and expectations.
Mm-hmm. How many years or how long did it take you to cleanse that to where you could get back to the game following it?
No, I think it took me probably 3, maybe 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you such a high percentage of former players that's their experience.
Okay.
They just had to get it out of their system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, talk about, on your day-to-day work, the team concept and being a middle linebacker's mentality. How did you bring that on-field leadership and teamwork concept to what you do now professionally?
Right. So now professionally, like I mentioned, I'm in business development, and I know that I can't make a sale unless I'm working with our team at the factory.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a real team element there, where everybody has roles to fulfill, and but from one role to the next, there also needs to be efficient and consistent communication, so that everybody's expectations are set appropriately and everybody knows what's coming down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of similarities in that way from that team approach.
But do they allow you to tackle any of the team members at work that aren't pulling their weight or get in the way? Is that permitted in your environment in the workplace, or is that not permitted?
Only when HR is looking the other way.
Nice. We're going to end right there. Guys, I could keep John here for hours. Fascinating man, fascinating story. One of Vanderbilt's very best. Jonathan, I sure appreciate you spending some time and letting us peek a little bit into your journey and your stories, because they're just so very important because of your place in the overall Vanderbilt football program history. So thank you, my new friend and number 47. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bernard. It's been fun. Thanks for having me on.
Well, good. Stick around for just a second, guys. We've still got a lot of stuff rolling through the discussions. We need you in the Black and Gold Club. I know Vandy United, et cetera, recruiting, whatever it is. Just keep coming back on Tuesday nights. I think I saw everybody. If I didn't give you a shout out, I apologize. Joe Peebles, sorry, Big Joe. Didn't mention you earlier. I want to get you on the show as well. We've got them all lined up coming up through next month and January. So y'all keep coming back. Always anchor down. Y'all have a good night.